I think I didn't do anything wrong, just tried to wake my husband up, show him what he stood to lose if he kept ignoring me. But now, there's a thick envelope with his lawyer's name on it, sitting on our kitchen table. I never meant for things to go this far. The silence in our kitchen had become so thick, you could cut it with a knife. Tom sat across from me, methodically eating his cereal while scrolling through quarterly reports on his tablet. 9-year-old Olivia pushed scrambled eggs around her plate, her usual chatter replaced by an uncomfortable quiet that seemed to mirror the growing distance between her parents. "So," I said, forcing brightness into my voice, "Lucas from accounting mentioned there's a new Thai place downtown. Maybe we could—" Tom hummed without looking up. I felt that familiar knot of frustration tighten in my chest. When had my husband of 11 years become this stranger? When had I become invisible in my own home? "Tom," my voice came out sharper than intended, "I'm talking to you." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. He glanced up briefly, those gray eyes that once looked at me with such warmth now holding nothing but polite attention. "Sorry, what were you saying?" "Nothing important, apparently." I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the tile floor. Olivia flinched at the sound. "Mommy?" she whispered, her dark eyes, so much like Tom's, wide with concern. "It's fine, sweetheart. Daddy's just very busy with his numbers." I shot Tom a pointed look, but he'd already returned to his tablet. As I loaded the dishwasher with unnecessary force, my phone buzzed against the counter. A text from Lucas. "Hope you're having a better morning than I am. Coffee later?" Despite everything, I smiled. At least someone noticed I existed. "Who's texting you?" Tom's voice made me jump. I looked over to find him watching me, something unreadable flickering across his features. For a moment, hope fluttered in my chest. Was that jealousy? "Just work stuff," I said casually, but I didn't put the phone down immediately. Instead, I typed back, "Definitely need caffeine. See you at 10? Tom's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but he said nothing. Later that evening, after Olivia had gone to bed, I sat in our living room scrolling through Instagram. The photo I'd posted from lunch with Lucas had gotten 17 likes already. Not bad for a Tuesday afternoon. It was innocent enough. 2 coffee cups on a cafe table, with just the edge of Lucas's sleeve visible. The caption read, "Sometimes you need good company to get through the day." "Blessed new photo?" Tom asked from the doorway. "Just lunch with a coworker." I held up my phone slightly, making sure he could see Lucas's name in the comments. "Great catching up with you," followed by a winking emoji. Tom's expression remained neutral, but I caught the way his fingers drummed against his thigh, a nervous habit he'd had since college. "You've been having a lot of lunches with coworkers lately," he observed. "Well, when your husband barely speaks to you at home, you find conversation elsewhere." The words came out more bitter than I'd intended, but I didn't take them back. Tom was quiet for a long moment. "Xanthi, if you want to talk—" "Do I?" I interrupted. "Because every time I try, you're either working or tired or distracted. When was the last time you asked me about my day? When was the last time you looked at me, really looked at me?" He opened his mouth to respond, but I was already walking past him toward the stairs. "I'm going to bed," I announced. "Alone, I assume, since you'll probably be working late again." I didn't wait for his response. In our bedroom, I changed into the silk pajamas I'd bought months ago, the ones Tom had never commented on. As I brushed my teeth, my phone buzzed again. "Thanks for today. You looked beautiful, by the way. Some people don't know how lucky they are." My reflection smiled back at me in the bathroom mirror. Finally, someone who appreciated me. Someone who saw me as more than just a fixture in the house, a name on tax returns, a body taking up space in bed. I typed back, "Thank you. I needed to hear that." As I slipped under the covers, I wondered if Tom would even notice I was wearing perfume. Probably not. But tomorrow, when Lucas complimented my new dress, when he laughed at my jokes and looked at me like I was the most interesting person in the room, maybe Tom would finally realize what he was losing. I fell asleep to the soft glow of my phone screen, scrolling through messages that made me feel alive again. The insurance office buzzed with the usual Tuesday morning energy, but I felt different walking through those familiar gray cubicles. Lighter somehow, more confident. The red dress I'd chosen hugged my curves in all the right places, and I'd taken extra time with my makeup. Xanthi. Lucas appeared beside my desk with 2 cups of coffee, his smile warm and conspiratorial. "Thought you might need this." "You're an angel," I said, accepting the cup and letting our fingers brush. Around us, I could feel eyes watching, whispers starting. Good. Let them talk. "So," Lucas leaned against my desk, his voice dropping to that intimate tone that made my stomach flutter. "I was thinking about our conversation yesterday, about feeling unappreciated." I glanced around the office. Sarah from claims processing was pretending to organize files while clearly eavesdropping. Marcus had stopped typing altogether. "Maybe we shouldn't," I started. "Shouldn't what? Be friends?" Lucas's green eyes held mine. "You deserve to be happy, Xanthi. You deserve to feel special." The rational part of my brain, the part that sounded suspiciously like my mother-in-law, Harriet, whispered warnings, but that voice was easily drowned out by the intoxicating rush of being wanted. "You're right," I said finally. "I do deserve that." By lunch, we'd moved from coffee at my desk to a quiet corner booth at Café Luna, 3 blocks from the office. Lucas ordered for both of us, remembering that I preferred my salad dressing on the side, a detail Tom had forgotten years ago. "Tell me about your marriage," Lucas said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. I should have pulled away, should have changed the subject. Instead, I found myself talking, really talking, for the first time in months. "We used to be so happy," I heard myself saying. But somewhere along the way, I became invisible. He comes home, eats dinner, watches TV, goes to bed, rinse and repeat. I could disappear tomorrow and I don't think he'd notice until tax season. "His loss," Lucas murmured, his thumb tracing circles on my wrist. "If you were mine, I'd never take you for granted." The words sent heat shooting through me. When was the last time Tom had said anything remotely romantic? When was the last time he'd touched me with intention rather than obligation? "I should go," I said, but I made no move to leave. "Should you?" Lucas's smile was dangerous. "Or should you do what makes you happy for once?" That evening, I floated through dinner preparations with unusual energy. I'd deleted the more flirtatious texts from Lucas, keeping only the ones that could be explained as friendly workplace banter. I wasn't doing anything wrong, after all, just enjoying some harmless attention. "You seem cheerful," Tom observed as I set his plate down. "Good day at work," I replied, settling into my chair across from him. Olivia sat between us, creating her usual elaborate story about her day at school. And then Jessica said her mom is taking her to Disney World for spring break, and I said that's nice, but I'd rather go somewhere with culture, like a museum or— "That's nice, sweetheart," I interrupted, my attention caught by my phone lighting up with a new message, already missing our lunch. "Sweet dreams, beautiful." I quickly flipped the phone face down, but not before Tom's sharp eyes caught the notification. "Work emergency?" he asked mildly. "Just Lucas confirming tomorrow's quarterly review meeting," I lied smoothly. Something flickered across Tom's face. Suspicion? Hurt? But it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. Later, after Olivia was in bed, I called my sister Mila. You sound different, she said immediately. Good different. What's going on? I found myself telling her about Lucas, about feeling appreciated again, about remembering what it was like to be desired. Xanthi, Mila's voice carried a warning. You're married. I'm not doing anything wrong, I insisted. We're just friends. Good friends who happen to find each other attractive. Tom doesn't own me. But Olivia deserves a mother who's happy, who feels alive, not some ghost floating through the house because her husband can't be bothered to remember she exists. There was a long pause. Just be careful, okay? These things have a way of getting complicated. After we hung up, I stared at my reflection in the dark window. Was I being reckless? Maybe, but for the first time in years, I felt like myself again. Vibrant, desirable, alive. My phone buzzed with another message from Lucas. Can't stop thinking about you. I typed back, good night, handsome. Then I deleted both messages and went upstairs to bed, where Tom was already asleep, turned away from my side of the mattress. As I lay there in the dark, I wondered if he'd even noticed I was gone from his life long before Lucas appeared. This wasn't about an affair. It was about survival, about refusing to disappear completely. If Tom woke up and paid attention, really paid attention, this could all stop tomorrow. But something told me that tomorrow would be just like today, and the day after that, and the day after that, unless I did something to change it. The restaurant buzzed with conversation and clinking glasses as our group settled around the large table. It was Sarah's birthday dinner, Sarah from the office, who'd insisted on inviting everyone from our department, which meant Lucas was sitting directly across from me, his knowing smile making my pulse quicken, while Tom sat to my right, politely making small talk with Graham, my father-in-law. I'd chosen my outfit carefully, a black dress that showed just enough cleavage to be interesting without being inappropriate, paired with the diamond earrings Tom had given me for our anniversary 3 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. Xanthi, you look stunning tonight, Lucas said as the waiter poured wine. His voice carried just far enough for the table to hear. Thank you, I replied, letting my smile linger a beat too long. You clean up pretty well yourself. I felt Tom shift beside me, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. Good. Finally, a reaction. So, Lucas, Harriet's voice cut through the chatter like ice. How long have you been working with Xanthi? My mother-in-law's tone was perfectly polite, but I caught the steel underneath. Harriet had always been protective of Tom, and her sharp blue eyes missed nothing. About 8 months now, Lucas replied smoothly. Xanthi's been such a wonderful mentor, really helped me settle into the company culture. How nice, Harriet said, her smile not reaching her eyes. Tom, didn't you mention Xanthi's been working quite a bit of overtime lately? I felt heat creep up my neck. The quarterly reports have been particularly complex this year. Lucas and I have been putting in extra hours to make sure everything's perfect. Together? Graham asked innocently. That's dedication. We work well as a team, I said, meeting Lucas's eyes across the table. Don't we? The best, he agreed, raising his wine glass in a mock toast, to excellent partnerships. The table fell into an uncomfortable silence. I could feel Tom's tension radiating beside me, could see the way Harriet's lips had pressed into a thin line. Even Graham looked uneasy. Perfect. As the evening progressed, I found myself leaning closer to Lucas during conversations, laughing a little too loudly at his jokes, touching his arm when I made a point. Each gesture felt like a small rebellion, a way of reclaiming my power in a marriage that had left me feeling invisible. Remember that conference call last week? I said during dessert, directing my comment to Lucas. When you said I was the smartest person in the room, I nearly choked on my coffee. I meant every word, Lucas replied, his voice warm. You're incredible at what you do. Tom's a lucky man. Finally, Tom spoke. Yes, he said quietly. I am. Something in his tone made me look at him sharply. His gray eyes held mine for a moment, and I saw something there I hadn't expected. Not jealousy or anger, but sadness. Deep, profound sadness. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was I going too far? But then I remembered all the nights he'd come home and barely acknowledged my presence. All the conversations where he'd looked right through me. All the times I'd felt like a stranger in my own life. "Well," I said brightly, "I should probably get photos of this lovely evening." I pulled out my phone and started snapping pictures, making sure to get several with Lucas and me laughing together. "These will be perfect for Instagram." "Xanthi," Tom's voice held a warning I chose to ignore. "What? We look good together." I showed the phone to the table, letting everyone see the photo of Lucas's arm around my shoulders. "This one's definitely going online." Harriet stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "Graham, I think it's time we headed home." "But we haven't finished," Graham started. "We're finished," Harriet said firmly, her cold gaze fixed on me. "Completely finished." As my in-laws gathered their things, I felt a flicker of uncertainty. Maybe I'd pushed too hard, too fast, but it was too late to back down now. "Leaving so early?" I asked, forcing lightness into my voice. Harriet paused beside my chair, leaning down to speak quietly in my ear. "Some mistakes can't be undone, dear. I hope you remember that." After they left, the table felt different. Conversations became stilted, and I noticed several people checking their phones, probably texting about the drama they'd just witnessed. Tom remained silent for the rest of the evening, his face a mask of polite composure that I recognized from his most difficult client meetings. When the check came, he paid without comment, and when we said our goodbyes, he shook Lucas's hand with professional courtesy. "Lovely evening," Lucas said to me, his hand lingering on my waist. "We should do this again soon." "Absolutely," I replied, very aware of Tom standing beside me. The drive home was silent, except for the soft hum of the radio. I kept glancing at Tom, waiting for the explosion, the accusations, the fight that would finally force everything into the open. Instead, he pulled into our driveway, turned off the engine, and sat quietly for a moment. "Tom?" I said finally. He turned to look at me, and again I saw that devastating sadness in his eyes. "We need to talk," he said simply. "Tomorrow." Then he got out of the car and walked into the house, leaving me sitting in the passenger seat with my heart hammering against my ribs. As I followed him inside, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. My lipstick was smudged, my hair slightly mussed from Lucas's hand, and my eyes bright with a mixture of excitement and fear. I looked like a woman on the edge of something. I just wasn't sure if it was salvation or destruction. Upstairs, I could hear Tom in the bathroom running water, going through his nightly routine as if nothing had happened, as if his world hadn't just shifted on its axis, but mine had, and tomorrow, everything would finally come to light. I just hoped I was ready for what that light would reveal. I spent the morning in a state of nervous energy, cleaning the house with unusual intensity while Tom was at work. Every surface gleamed, every pillow was perfectly arranged, as if creating order in our home could somehow prepare me for the chaos I sensed coming. When Olivia came home from school, she seemed to sense the tension immediately. "Where's Daddy?" she asked, dropping her backpack by the door. "He'll be home soon, sweetheart. Why don't you go work on your homework?" But instead of heading upstairs, she lingered in the kitchen doorway, watching me with those too perceptive dark eyes. "Are you and Daddy fighting?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "What makes you ask that? You don't talk to each other anymore, and last night, Grandma Harriet looked really upset when we left the restaurant." I knelt down to her level, forcing a smile. "Sometimes grown-ups have complicated feelings, honey, but we both love you very much. That will never change." She nodded solemnly, but I could see the worry etched in her young features as she finally trudged upstairs. Tom arrived home at exactly 6:17 p.m., later than usual, but not by much. He hung his coat in the closet with his typical precision, set his briefcase by the door, and walked into the kitchen where I was pretending to be absorbed in preparing dinner. "Smells good," he said politely. "Chicken marsala? Your favorite?" "Thank you." The civility was worse than anger would have been. At least anger would have shown he cared enough to fight for us. During dinner, Olivia chattered about her day, filling the silence between Tom and me with stories about her art class and the book she was reading. I found myself studying my husband's face, looking for cracks in his composure, signs of the jealousy or hurt that should have been eating him alive. Instead, he looked tired, deeply, profoundly tired. After Olivia went to bed, Tom and I sat in the living room like polite strangers. He had a stack of papers beside him on the coffee table. Work documents, I assumed. "So," I said finally, unable to stand the silence any longer. "You wanted to talk." He nodded, setting down the financial report he'd been reviewing. "I've been doing some thinking about us, about our marriage." "Good," I said, settling back in my chair. "I'm glad you're finally paying attention." Something flickered across his face. "Oh, I've been paying attention, Xanthi, more than you realize." There was something in his tone that made my stomach clench, but I pushed forward. "Then you know things haven't been good between us. I've been trying to get your attention for months, Tom. I've felt invisible in my own home. Is that what you call it? Trying to get my attention? What else would you call it?" He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming against his thigh, that nervous habit again. "I'd call it having an affair with your coworker." The words hung in the air between us like a physical presence. I felt my carefully prepared denials crumble before I could voice them. "That's ridiculous," I managed. "Lucas and I are friends, colleagues." "Friends." Tom's voice was flat. "Is that what we're calling it?" "Tom, you're being paranoid." "Am I?" He reached for the stack of papers beside him, and I realized with growing horror that they weren't work documents at all. Because I have to say, the evidence suggests otherwise. He handed me a manila folder. Inside were printouts, text messages, bank statements, receipts. My text messages, my bank statements, my receipts. "Where did you get these?" I whispered. "Does it matter?" Tom's voice remained calm, controlled. "The question is, are you going to continue lying to me?" I stared at the evidence of my deception laid out in black and white. Messages to Lucas that I thought I'd deleted. ATM withdrawals near his apartment building. A receipt from the hotel where I'd... "This isn't what it looks like," I said desperately. "What does it look like, Xanthi? You're twisting everything, making innocent interactions seem... innocent?" Tom stood abruptly, pacing to the window. "You want to talk about innocent? Let's talk about our daughter asking me why Mommy doesn't love Daddy anymore. Let's talk about my mother calling to ask if everything's okay because you were practically sitting in another man's lap at dinner last night. Your mother has always hated me." "Don't." Tom's voice cut through my words like a blade. "Don't you dare make this about my mother. This is about you, about us, about the fact that instead of talking to me about problems in our marriage, you decided to solve them by fucking someone else." I flinched at the profanity. Tom never swore, never raised his voice, never lost control. "It's not like that," I said weakly. "Then what is it like? Explain it to me, because I'm having trouble understanding how sleeping with your coworker was supposed to fix our marriage." "I never slept with..." He pulled out another sheet of paper, a hotel receipt with my name on it, dated 3 days ago. The same day I'd told him I was working late on quarterly reports. The silence stretched between us, broken only by the tick of the grandfather clock in the corner. "I want to understand," Tom said finally, his voice softer now, but somehow more devastating. I really do. Help me understand how we got here. I opened my mouth to explain, to justify, to make him see that this was his fault as much as mine. But looking at him, really looking at him for the first time in months, I saw the pain I'd been too self-absorbed to notice before. "Tom," I whispered. "I've made an appointment with a lawyer," he said quietly. "Tomorrow at 10. The words hit me like a physical blow. "A lawyer? Tom, we can work this out. We can go to counseling. Can we?" He turned to face me fully. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've already made your choice. The only question now is how we're going to handle the aftermath. What about Olivia? What about her? You should have thought about Olivia before you decided to blow up our family." The accusation stung because it was true. In all my justifications and rationalizations, I'd barely considered how this would affect our daughter. "I never meant for it to go this far," I said. But it did. Tom gathered up the papers, sliding them back into the folder with methodical precision. And now, we have to deal with the consequences. As he headed toward the stairs, I called after him. "Tom, please, can't we just talk about this? Really talk?" He paused on the bottom step, his back to me. "What's left to talk about, Xanthi? You've made it very clear how you feel about our marriage, about me." "That's not true." "Isn't it?" He turned, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger, not hurt, but something far worse. Indifference. "You know what the saddest part is? If you'd just talk to me, really talk to me, about feeling neglected, about wanting more attention, about needing something different, I would have listened. I would have tried." "You can still try," I whispered. He shook his head slowly. "Some things can't be undone, Xanthi. Some choices can't be taken back." As his footsteps echoed up the stairs, I remained frozen in the living room, surrounded by the wreckage of my carefully constructed justifications. From upstairs, I could hear the soft murmur of Tom's voice as he checked on Olivia, the gentle sound of her bedroom door closing. Normal parental sounds in a house that no longer felt like a home. I picked up my phone to text Lucas, to find some comfort in his reassuring words, but stopped myself. For the first time, I wondered if what I'd seen as salvation might actually be destruction, and if it was too late to tell the difference. The law office smelled like leather and disappointment. I sat across from Tom in the sterile conference room, my hands folded tightly in my lap to keep them from shaking. His lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Kellerman, had arranged documents across the polished table with the precision of a surgeon laying out instruments. "Mrs. Marwood," Patricia began, her voice professionally neutral, "your husband has asked me to present you with the terms for dissolution of your marriage." Dissolution. The word tasted bitter. That makes it sound so clinical. "These proceedings often are," Patricia replied. "It helps to keep emotions from clouding practical decisions." I looked at Tom, searching his face for any sign of the man who'd once promised to love me forever. He sat perfectly still, his gray eyes fixed on a point somewhere over my shoulder. "Tom, please," I said, "can we talk privately for a minute?" "I think it's best if we handle this through counsel," he replied without looking at me. Patricia slid the first document across the table. "These are the custody arrangements. Mr. Marwood is seeking primary physical custody of Olivia, with you having supervised visitation initially, progressing to alternate weekends pending evaluation." "Supervised?" The word came out as a gasp. "You want to take my daughter away from me?" "I want to protect my daughter," Tom said quietly, finally meeting my eyes, "from the chaos you've created. I would never hurt Olivia. Wouldn't you?" Patricia pulled out a folder I recognized with growing dread. "We have documentation of erratic behavior, unexplained absences, and what appears to be financial mismanagement of joint accounts. The bank statements, the hotel receipts. the evidence of my double life spread out like accusations. "You've been having me followed," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I've been paying attention," Tom corrected. "Something I should have done sooner." Patricia continued with ruthless efficiency. "There's also the matter of the joint savings account. Several large withdrawals over the past 2 months, totaling nearly $8,000. My cheeks burned. The money I'd spent on new clothes, expensive dinners with Lucas, the hotel rooms, luxuries I'd justified as investments in my happiness. "I can explain." "Can you?" Tom's voice was steady, but I caught the tremor of hurt underneath. "Because I'd love to hear how spending our daughter's college fund on your affair was in anyone's best interest." The conference room felt like it was closing in around me. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Tom was supposed to fight for me, to realize what he'd lost, and beg for another chance. Instead, he sat there with the calm composure of a man who'd already moved on. "There's more," Patricia said, pulling out what looked like a tablet. "We have security footage from the hotel, time-stamped records of communications, and witness statements from colleagues who observed inappropriate behavior in the workplace." She pressed play on a video file. Grainy security footage showed me and Lucas in the hotel lobby, his hand on my lower back as we walked toward the elevators. The timestamp read 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday when I'd told Tom I was in back-to-back client meetings. "How long have you been collecting evidence?" I asked. "Long enough," Tom replied. "I wanted to be thorough." Thorough. I laughed, but it came out harsh and broken. "You've been building a case against me like I'm some kind of criminal. Aren't you?" The question hung in the air between us. "You lied to me, to our daughter, to everyone who cared about you. You stole money from our joint accounts to fund your affair. You humiliated me in front of our friends and family. What would you call that?" I had no answer. Every justification I'd constructed over the past months crumbled under the weight of evidence. "I want to see Olivia," I said finally. "She's staying with my parents," Tom replied. "She doesn't want to see you right now." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That Mommy made some bad choices and now our family is changing." "She's 9 years old, Tom. She doesn't understand. She understands more than you think." Patricia pulled out another document, a child's drawing in crayon. It showed a house with 3 stick figures, a tall man, a small girl, and off to the side, separated by a jagged black line, a woman with yellow hair. "She drew this yesterday when the family counselor asked her to show how she feels about her family." I stared at the drawing, at my daughter's artistic representation of our broken home. In the picture, Tom and Olivia stood together in front of the house holding hands. I stood alone on the other side of that black line, isolated and apart. "This is temporary," I said desperately. "Once she understands that I did this for us, for our family." "You did this for yourself," Tom interrupted, his composure finally cracking. "Don't you dare try to make this about us or about Olivia. You did this because you were bored, because you wanted attention, because you thought the rules didn't apply to you." "That's not fair." "Fair?" Tom stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been you coming to me when you felt neglected. Fair would have been marriage counseling. Fair would have been trying to fix our problems instead of creating new ones." Patricia cleared her throat diplomatically. "Perhaps we should take a break." "No," Tom said, sitting back down. "Let's finish this." She slid another document across the table. "Asset division. Given the circumstances, Mr. Marwood is entitled to significant consideration in the settlement." The numbers swam before my eyes. Tom would keep the house, the majority of our savings, his retirement accounts. I would get my car, half of what remained in checking, and the burden of my own debts. "This leaves me with almost nothing," I protested. You should have thought of that before you spent our money on hotel rooms, Tom replied coldly. As Patricia continued outlining the terms, spousal support, minimal, division of personal property, methodical, custody arrangements, devastating, I felt my carefully constructed world collapsing around me. I need time to think about this, I said finally. You have 48 hours to respond, Patricia replied. After that, we'll file with or without your agreement. As we prepared to leave, Tom finally looked at me directly. For what it's worth, Xanthi, I did love you. I loved you enough to try to save our marriage even when I knew what you were doing. But you made your choice. What choice? Tom, I never chose. You chose him over me. You chose lies over honesty. You chose your own desires over our family. His voice was quiet, final. Now, you get to live with those choices. Outside the law office, I sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at the divorce papers in my lap. The late afternoon sun slanted through the windshield, illuminating every damning detail in stark relief. My phone buzzed with a text from Lucas. Haven't heard from you in days. Everything okay? I stared at the message, at the casual concern from the man who'd helped me destroy my marriage. The man who'd disappeared the moment things got complicated, leaving me to face the consequences alone. Instead of responding, I deleted his number. It was too late for a lot of things, but maybe it wasn't too late to stop making everything worse. The mediation room was calm by design, soft colors, tissues everywhere, but nothing could soften what we were doing, ending a family. Tom was already seated when I arrived, documents stacked neatly before him. Dr. Chen, the mediator, spoke gently. Do you have concerns about the custody terms, Mrs. Marwood? I want more time with my daughter, I said. Olivia has expressed anxiety, she replied. She's asked to stay with her father for now. She's been turned against me. No one turned her, Tom said quietly. She's reacting to your choices. I lashed out. What about your choices, Tom? All those nights you ignored me? You felt invisible, he said evenly. So you had an affair. I looked down at the papers dividing our lives. This isn't what I wanted. What did you want? He asked. To matter. I tried, he said softly. You just stopped looking at me. When it ended, I went outside to say goodbye. Olivia sat in her grandparents' car, coloring. I love you, sweetheart, I told her. Are you going to live somewhere else? Yes, but I'll still see you. Will you be happy? She asked. I'll try, I said, knowing she was already learning what my choices had cost. 6 weeks later, in my tiny apartment, the divorce decree sat on the table, official, final. The affair was over, the family gone, the silence absolute. I'd chased attention and called it love. Now I finally understood the difference. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.